We are perhaps the only species on Earth capable of crafting empires of desire, collecting every conceivable treasure, and yet finding ourselves utterly bankrupt within. There's a man who owns every possession he ever dreamed of: luxury, cars, sprawling estates, accolades that fill entire rooms, and yet when he looks in the mirror, all he sees is a stranger staring back, haunted by a profound silence where peace should reside. He has everything, except the feeling of being truly alive. This isn't just his story, it's a reflection of a paradox lurking within us all. How does this happen? How does one reach the summit, only to find the air thin and the view hollow? Let me ask you, have you ever climbed a mountain of achievement and reached the peak breathless only to feel an unsettling emptiness echo back? Like an invisible hole at the center of your being, one no amount of success, validation, or distraction seems capable of filling. We've been sold a glittering promise, haven't we? Work harder, earn more, acquire more, be better. And then the narrative goes, wholeness will arrive gift-wrapped. But deep down, a quiet, persistent whisper tells us this isn't the full truth. The world screams for external validation, the likes, the promotions, the applause, while the subtle language of our hearts often goes unheard, unheeded. Somewhere between the chase and the victory, between the deadlines and the distractions, a silent theft occurs. The vital connection to our core self is traded for a convincing performance, an existence built on paper, leaving us forgetting the inkling of who we truly are. Think about it. When was the last time you truly sat with yourself, not scrolling, not planning, not escaping through noise, but simply being? In a culture obsessed with productivity, relentless motion, and outward projection, stillness feels radical. Vulnerability feels like a liability. Yet, these are the very portals back to ourselves. This isn't just a personal tragedy playing out in isolated lives. It's a collective condition, a symptom of our age. We've never had more access, more connection, more things, yet a pervasive sense of disconnection and lack of gnawing beneath the surface. Millions wake each day, chasing goals dictated by external pressures, living lives that feel increasingly foreign. We've turned having into an intricate art form and forgotten that being is the actual masterpiece. But here's the essential truth. You weren't put here merely to survive the climb. You were born to thrive in the landscape of your authentic existence. So today we journey into the heart of this gilded cage. We explore the untold story, the inner world, of the man who had everything and still felt nothing. We're not just diagnosing emptiness, we're reverse engineering it. Like archaeologists of the soul, we'll dig through the layers of societal conditioning, psychological traps, and the subtle ways we relinquish our inner authority. His journey will take us through shadows and light, uncovering truths many spend lifetimes avoiding. This isn't just another video essay. Consider it a mirror held up to your inner world, a chance to confront the parts of yourself you may have buried under layers of expectation and performance. By the end of this exploration, you might discover not only why you felt that persistent emptiness, but more crucially, how to begin reclaiming the substance, the meaning, and the aliveness that's missing. They told you happiness was found at the finish line of achievement. That belonging came from fitting seamlessly into prescribed molds, that your worth was a number calculated by bank accounts, follower counts, or external accolades. But what if that entire framework is flawed? Everything you believe about the direct path from external success to internal fulfillment is about to unravel. What if the secret lies not in acquiring more, but in remembering less? Less noise, less fear, less pretending. And here's the paradox. No one readily admits, the more adept you become at winning the world's game, the easier it becomes to completely lose track of the infinitely more important game you were born to play, the game of being authentically you. As we dive deeper into this resonant story, I want you to hold one question close, not just as a viewer, but as a fellow human navigating this complex existence. What part of you is still waiting, quietly, perhaps desperately, for permission to truly exist? What have you collected in this life that is now subtly, insidiously collecting you in return? The truth, as we'll uncover, is often darker and far more liberating than you've been led to believe. You might already possess everything you truly need. Now, it's simply time to remember. This emptiness is not new. It is not accidental. It is the inevitable result of a system of thought we've inherited, one that prizes accumulation over meaning, speed over depth, performance over presence. Centuries ago, the philosopher Blaise Pascal observed, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." And yet, here we are, in an age of unprecedented distraction, proving his point with every swipe, every notification, every desperate grasp for external validation. Carl Jung warned of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we exile in pursuit of social acceptance. The more we chase the perfect image, the more we fracture our wholeness. The man who has everything, he is not free, he is a prisoner of his own carefully constructed persona. Eastern philosophy offers a different path. The Zen masters speak of beginner's mind, the wisdom of emptiness, of not knowing. In their view, true richness comes not from adding, but from subtracting, from letting go of the illusions that cloud our vision. Modern psychology echoes this. Studies on hedonic adaptation reveal a cruel truth. No matter what we acquire, we return to our baseline level of happiness. The thrill fades, the new becomes normal, and the hunger remains. So why do we keep chasing? Because we've confused the map for the territory. We've been taught that worth is measured in outputs, not in being, that we are human doings, not human beings. But what if the real power lies not in control, but in surrender? Not in building higher walls, but in dismantling them? The hidden cost, unseen consequences you're ignoring. The price of this illusion is steep. It's in the marriages that look perfect on Instagram, but are empty behind closed doors. In the executives who climb to the top only to find their health ruined and their relationships hollow. In the artists who gain fame but lose their creative spark. We call it success. But is it? Neurologically, we're wired for connection, not accumulation. Mirror neurons fire not when we acquire things, but when we share experiences. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, flows not from stock portfolios but from eye contact, from touch, from being truly seen. Yet we live in a world that systematically starves us of these very nutrients. We've built cities that isolate, economies that exhaust, and technologies that distract us from our own humanity. The greatest cost, the slow erosion of self. Every time we silence an instinct to please others, every time we numb a feeling with another purchase, every time we choose productivity over presence, we trade fragments of our aliveness for the illusion of security. And the cruelest irony? The more we succeed at this game, the harder it becomes to stop playing. The counterintuitive truth. A radical shift in perspective. What if fulfillment isn't about getting, but about receiving? Not about achieving, but about allowing. Consider the Japanese concept of ma, the sacred space between things. The pause between notes that makes music. The silence between words that gives them meaning. We've filled all our ma with noise, and wonder why our lives feel dissonant. Or the Danish practice of hygge, the radical act of being content with simple presence. No grand achievements required, just the warmth of a shared moment, fully inhabited. These aren't just philosophies. They're survival strategies for the human soul in an age of depletion. The solution isn't to abandon ambition, but to redefine success. Not as something to grasp, but as a quality of attention, a way of moving through the world awake, connected, alive to the miracle of ordinary moments. This is the secret the man on the rooftop hasn't learned, that true wealth is measured in depth of feeling, not digits in accounts, that the most precious things can't be owned, only experienced, fade to black. The ultimate truth, the most powerful realization. Here's the revelation that changes everything. You already are what you've been seeking. The peace, the wholeness, the sense of enoughness. It wasn't ever out there. It was the seeker himself that was the obstacle. The relentless striving that drowned out the quiet voice whispering, "You are already home." This isn't spiritual. Bypassing. It's the hardest work there is. To stop running, to stop performing, to stop believing the lie that you need to earn your right to exist. The man who had everything? His greatest possession would be the courage to admit he feels nothing, because that admission is the crack where the light gets in. Your turn now. The world will keep selling its empty promises. But you now know the truth. So breathe. Just this breath, just this moment. Nothing to prove, nowhere to be, nothing to become. This is where life actually lives. So how do we return? How do we find our way back from this self-created exile? It begins with a simple, terrifying act. Stopping, not slowing down, stopping completely. Creating space between the impulse to chase and the act itself. In that pause, something miraculous happens. We remember who we are beneath all the striving. The ancient Greeks had a word for this, kenosis, the emptying out. Not to become nothing, but to make room for everything that matters. Try this now. Put down your phone, close your eyes, feel your breath moving through you. Notice how the world doesn't collapse when you stop performing. Notice how life continues to hold you, exactly as you are. This is the first rebellion against the illusion, the radical act of being present with what is, rather than chasing what might be. Presence isn't something that happens to us. It's something we cultivate. Like any skill, it requires practice. Start small. 5 minutes each morning doing nothing but watching the light change. A meal eaten without distraction. A conversation where you listen more than speak. These are revolutionary acts. In a world addicted to motion, they feel awkward at first, like using muscles long forgotten. But with time, something shifts. You begin to taste your life again. The Japanese art of kintsugi offers a powerful metaphor, broken pottery repaired with gold. The breaks aren't hidden, they're celebrated. What if we treated our fractures the same way? Not as failures to conceal, but as evidence of having lived. This is how we rebuild, not by adding more layers of armor, but by embracing our cracks as portals to authenticity. Why is this so difficult? Because we're terrified of what we might find in the quiet. That maybe we're not extraordinary. That perhaps we're just ordinary. But here's the secret the mystics knew. Ordinary is where the magic lives. The smell of rain on the pavement, the way light filters through leaves, the warmth of a hand in yours. These are the miracles we overlook in our quest for grandeur. The man who had everything feared most the moment he stopped achieving. Because without the chase, who was he? This is our collective terror. That without our accomplishments, we might disappear, but the opposite is true. When we stop performing, we finally appear. This isn't about renouncing success, it's about redefining it. You can still build, create, and achieve, but from a different place. Not from lack, but from wholeness. Imagine pursuing goals not to fill a void, but as an expression of your already complete self. This changes everything. The pressure lifts, the desperation fades. What remains is pure creative energy, untainted by need. The paradox? The less you need your achievements to define you, the more impactful they become. Because now they're gifts, not lifelines. This is how the man on the rooftop finds his way down, by realizing the ground is always beneath his feet. One day, you'll catch yourself in an unguarded moment, maybe laughing at something silly or lost in a sunset. And you'll realize this is it. This is what you've been chasing all along. Not some distant future where everything is perfect, but this, here, now. The man who had everything finally discovers his greatest possession, the courage to be nothing special, just himself, flawed, imperfect, gloriously ordinary. And in that realization, the most miraculous thing happens. The emptiness fills with presence. The silence becomes rich with meaning. The stranger in the mirror, you recognize him at last, welcome home. But this journey was never just about you. There's a secret power in coming home to yourself. It permits others to do the same. Think of the last time you encountered someone truly at peace with themselves, not preaching, not performing, just being. Didn't it make something in you relax? Didn't some tight knot within you loosen just a little? This is how we change the world. Not through grand gestures, but through the quiet revolution of presence. Every moment you choose authenticity over armor, you send ripples through the collective consciousness. The man who had everything becomes the man who gives everything, not possessions, but something far more precious. The example that another way exists. The system will keep demanding your distraction. The machines will keep hungry for your attention. The question is, where will you place your humanity? Try these silent revolutions. Leave your phone behind on a walk. Sit through a craving without numbing it. Have a conversation where you don't steer it toward your achievements. Notice what happens. At first, panic, the addicted mind screaming for stimulation. Then, if you stay, a softening, an opening, the return of something ancient and true. These aren't just personal practices. They're acts of cultural sabotage against the forces that profit from your disconnection. We must examine the stories we've swallowed. That busyness equals worthiness. That more is always better. That vulnerability is weakness. Try this. For one day, track how often you apologize for taking up space, for needing rest, for simply being. Then ask, who taught you this? And who benefits from you believing it? The path back to yourself is paved with these uncomfortable questions. Each answered honestly loosens another chain. The man who had everything discovers his greatest. Freedom, the right to stop explaining, justifying, proving. Enlightenment isn't some distant peak. It's hiding in your morning coffee. On the way, light slants through your window. In the weight of a child's hand, trusting yours. Try this today. Pick one routine act, peeling an orange, tying your shoes, washing dishes, and do it with full attention. Notice how the ordinary becomes luminous when met with presence. This is where the divine lives. Not in some far-off heaven, but in the texture of this moment exactly as it is. The man who had everything finally understands he wasn't empty, he was just looking in the wrong places. There will never be a perfect moment to begin. The inbox will never be empty. The to-do list is never complete. This is your invitation to step off the treadmill of more, to risk being seen as you are, to trade the exhausting pursuit of everything for the rich simplicity of now. The man who had everything? His story doesn't end on that rooftop in Tingmit. Begins when he turns away from the edge and takes his first real step back toward life. Your story awaits the same choice. We've been measuring our lives against invisible rulers, someone else's definition of wealth, someone else's timeline for success. But what if you designed your metrics? Imagine a life where enough isn't the minimum, it's the maximum, where your worth isn't tied to your output, but to your depth of being. This isn't settling, this is the ultimate act of rebellion. The man who had everything realizes too late that his greatest poverty was never material. It was the inability to say, this is enough, I am enough. Your attention is the most fertile soil you possess. Whatever you plant there, anxiety, or comparison or compassion, will inevitably grow. Watch what happens when you shift the balance. Spend 1 week feeding your mind with what enlarges it rather than what shrinks it. Notice how your inner landscape changes when you consume less news, more poetry, fewer hot takes, more timeless wisdom. The man who had everything discovers too late that he was starving while surrounded by a feast, because he never learned to truly taste. We've been sold armor our whole lives, emotional calluses, professional personas, Instagram perfect masks. But the real revolution? Taking it all off. Try this experiment. Have one conversation today where you lead with, "This is how I feel," instead of "I'm fine." Watch how the world doesn't end, how instead, space opens for genuine connection. The man who had everything finally understands. His polished exterior wasn't protecting him, it was isolating him. Every yes to something meaningless is a no to something vital. The modern tragedy? We trade our irreplaceable hours for entirely replaceable things. Conduct an audit of your attention this week. Where does it go? How much is spent on what will matter in a year, in a lifetime? The man who had everything realizes his greatest bankruptcy wasn't financial, it was temporal. All those postponed sunsets, delayed conversations, missed moments of wonder. Here's the secret no one tells you. This feeling of searching. It's not because you're behind, it's because you're awake. The discomfort isn't a sign you're failing, It's proof you're outgrowing old skins, that persistent longing, not for more but for deeper. The man who had everything finally sees. He wasn't missing pieces, he was ignoring wholeness. Not lacking resources, but misallocating attention. Not absent from life, but absent from himself. And you? You're exactly where you need to be. The only question left is, will you show up for it? So where do we go from here? Not toward some distant enlightenment, but back to the life you've been waiting to live while chasing the one you thought you should want. This isn't an ending, it's a homecoming. The man who had everything didn't need to find something new, he needed to remember what was already there, and so do you. So take this not as closure, but as a key. The world will keep spinning its stories of lack and more, but you now know the truth. The door was never locked. You were always free. Step through.